What is Ethereum? What is the blockchain?
Yep.
Is this a scam?
Welcome to the Gig Boss Podcast, where musicians go to learn how to navigate the new music economy. My name is Adam Meckler, and it's my mission to get you the tools to have a thriving career in music. By now, you've heard all about NFTs. Crypto bros fawning over something called Bored Apes. Maybe it makes you roll your eyes. Maybe you don't like the energy consumption and fraud in the space. Or maybe you're curious. You can see that there's potential for artists to take back the power and sell their art for what their fans think it's worth. And with Ethereum merging to a new system called Proof of Stake that will literally decrease power consumption to 1% of what it is now, it's a hard thing to completely ignore. Is there something here that could totally change how we consume art? My guest today is Drew Morton. Known as DrewMadeStuff in the NFT community, Drew is a music maker and a digital artist. He's been making digital art since before he had even heard of NFTs. Because of his large body of work, he even got an email from some ragtag coders asking him if he would sell his art as NFTs on their platform.
And then in 2019, I got asked to join this marketplace called Maker's Place. I got this whole spiel about how you mint your art on the Ethereum blockchain and you sell it and you get Ethereum. And I'm like, what is Ethereum? What is the blockchain?
Yep.
Is this a scam?
Yep.
And so I ignored it. I ignored the email. And then they came back again, and it was like a super personalized email. The first one I thought,
so they're coming after you because you had a huge body of work. That they saw as digital art, and they're trying to get artists on there. Interesting.
Yeah. And they're trying to like get this ball rolling, and I'm like, no, I just want to play my music and have my art behind me.
Yeah, sure.
But then they sent me another email that was, personalized and different from the first one. It made me think, oh, this is maybe not a scam. Okay, I should look at this. So I put a bunch of stuff on Maker's Place. I don't know if I even sold one in the next. Maybe I sold one in the first few months or something. But again, I didn't really know what blockchain was, Ethereum was, so I didn't really pay much attention to it.
So Ethereum is like at $400 a coin or something at that time, 2019?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I was like pricing my stuff at like what was going to be $40, like point something Ethereum, and it had the USD value next to it. I'm like, oh yeah, this will be worth, I could be happy selling this for $40.
Yeah.
And then I leave it sit there for like a couple of years, come back in 2021 when things are like blowing up, and I go in there and I look at what I had sold at the time. I sold for it was like $40.
Yeah.
But now I turn around and I have like $300 worth of Ethereum sitting in my little wallet there.
Interesting.
But then I also look at all of my prices that I set that are now just like astronomical, and it makes me look like a huge jerk, like this pompous just artist who thinks I'm just worth so much. And I'm like, I didn't know what I was doing when I did this.
Yeah. Drew had this body of work because he decided to do something called everydays starting in 2012, and he did them all the way until 2019. An insane amount of work, which must have taken a crazy amount of discipline. That means starting and finishing a piece of digital art every single day, which amounts to maybe 2,500 pieces.
Well, the visuals for music started, I think, all the way back 2012, somewhere between 2010 and 2012. I got inspired by this artist named Beeple.
I know Beeple, yeah.
He's been doing everydays, and he inspired me to start doing everydays. I did everydays from 2012 through 2019.
Holy smokes.
Just starting and finishing a piece of digital art. Some are better than others, made plenty of garbage in those years. But it also set me up to build this foundation for what I could easily turn into an animation, which then I would take to Copeland shows and Jack Lyon shows and just try to get these animations playing behind us, because people will also have animations. And I think he first got a big break with Flying Lotus, maybe not his first big break, but I saw a lot of his stuff being played with Flying Lotus.
And it was interesting.
Super cool.
I didn't realize Flying Lotus used Beeple animations. That's sweet.
For a little bit, I think. For a while, that was like the only outlet for me to that was like I'd make animations, and that was like the only place I could show it off and have people see it. So, it was great. It was fine. You know, got a lot of positive feedback.
Now, Drew is just an artist making art, and he's not purchasing a Bored Ape or a CryptoPunk and then adding something to it and then trying to flip it for a profit. He's an artist. And so I asked him if there was a divide between the people that are in NFT communities to create and sell art versus the people that are in NFT communities to make a quick buck.
Yeah, there's I wouldn't say divide, but it's interesting being in that realm because you've got like the one-of-one artists where they make a piece and there's only one available. Someone gets that one copy. And then there's like the edition artists who make art and they sell like 10 to 50 editions of it for relatively cheap. You've got the PFP projects where, you know, you click a button and it generates from all these traits that are designed by the artist, and then the computer algorithm puts them all together into a unique trait. So you've got like...
So what's PFP stand for? What is that?
Profile picture.
Oh, okay.
Because they're usually just like avatars, like Bored Ape.
Right.
And so then in that generative aspect, you've got like 10,000 unique one-of-ones that are all within this same branding, I suppose.
Right.
What I think is cool with like what Bored Ape is doing, and I think a lot of other people are trying to also do, is for the people that buy them and holders, they get extra stuff or get access to other things just to try to give this project more utility for the holders.
Right.
Which is cool, but I also don't want to stray away from the idea that like art can exist just by itself. Just like music can exist just by itself. Like you don't ask the person on stage, like, what am I going to get out of coming to this concert of yours and listening to you play? Like,
well, you know, it's interesting you say that because like we do that, don't we? We sell VIP tickets and we do backstage visits. And like, so there is an element of that in the music industry, and there's always going to be some level of like, well, what else do I get?
Yeah. I've seen more and more musical artists say like, you know, you buy this album, this NFT album, and you'll get lifetime access to all my live performances.
Yeah.
Along with, you know, some merch or whatnot. But
yeah.
And I just saw today, I don't remember which group it was, but if you buy a ticket and you also attend the concert, then you get an NFT airdropped to your wallet, like as a proof of like you went to the show, and it's supposed to be like super exclusive. But I think stuff like that is pretty cool.
Yeah, or like you get, you know, if you record the show live or something, you get the live recording of the show or something. Like that would be interesting.
Just like little bookmarks of like, oh, like I remember that. Like sort of like with your passport, you open up your passport and you see all the stamps of where you were.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Digital wallet and look at all these different events that you went to or...
Right. So at this point, you could decide that you're not into digital images, you're not into digital scarcity, you don't find any value in that, and that could be that. But what I find to be the most interesting part about what Drew does is that he both does music and digital art. So he combines his disciplines into one piece of art, both his digital imaging and his music.
Yeah, so anymore, most of my pieces that I'm releasing they're animated loops with looped audio with it.
Okay.
So what I'm imagining is like, I just want to see it on a wall that just is a seamless loop, and it's got like speakers so that you can just stand there and it's kind of ambiguous where it starts and begins, but it just continues going. I don't know. Some are easier to put together than others.
How long are the loops?
Between 30 seconds to a minute, usually.
Okay. So pretty long loops.
Partially because of file size limits right now on the different platforms, but those are always, you know, getting increased. So right now, I think the limit is 150 megabytes, which is exciting. That's a recent addition, so I'm excited to kind of expand my loops and try to make them longer.
I like the idea of imagining the future of art galleries, imagining the future of home art. You know, I was just looking at one of the apps for the Tezos blockchain, and it's basically just like a display your NFTs app, and you can take all your NFTs, go to this app, and then you can pair that app to your Apple TV or to whatever and display the art essentially on like a rotation, right? So you can have like a TV in your room and you can display your art on rotation, all the NFTs that you own. And I imagine that someday picture frames are digital, and that's already happening a little bit, right? There's already picture frames that cycle through digital images, but being able to display your NFTs that way, and maybe making it so that only the person that owns the NFT can display it that way or something.
It does seem the digital frames seem a bit clunky to me right now.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see where they go.
Right. And
I'm excited to see the ideas that people come up with in this whole space. It's really exciting.
Yeah. So you host your stuff on a variety of platforms, KnownOrigin.io, OpenSea, Object, which is OBJK, is that right?
Yeah.
Do you find that like each one of these platforms has its advantages and disadvantages? Do you find that each one of these platforms has its own community of art buyers that are interested in different things? Like, what are you noticing between these different platforms?
I think in general, people that buy art are pretty savvy across all of the platforms. Early on, that used to be a question thrown around a lot to like the heavy collectors. Like, is there a specific platform that you prefer to buy from, or do you hop around? And I think, especially a year plus in for most artists and collectors, it's just all over the map. Yeah. Like, I started on Maker's Place, and for a while I thought I would just stay there, but then the Tezos side of things seemed to be very appealing. That side sort of became this like experimental place, and with the lower transactional fees, it was super easy to just make some art and like share it with other artists, and just like it was low pressure place to share your art with other people without having to be at the whims of the gas fees.
Okay, so I remember the first time I started learning about crypto and NFTs and the blockchain and transactional fees and gas fees. I kept hearing this term gas. And when I went to do my first transactions, I saw gas there, and the transaction fees were so high, I thought, what's going on here? And so for those of you that don't understand the system, gas fees are essentially the cost of doing a transaction on the blockchain. And if you're someone who's ever accepted credit card payments for selling your art online, then you already know that there are already fees for transactions that exist in our current fiat system. And what the merge is going to do with Ethereum, and Ethereum is the biggest blockchain, it's the most decentralized, it's the one that was built by like the Elon Musk of crypto. That's a horrible way of saying it. The Bill Gates of crypto. Right? This guy is like total brainiac. His name's Vitalik Buterin. And from the start, he has drawn out this plan to move to proof of stake eventually versus proof of work, this proof of stake merge, right? So proof of work is like it has to go through all these different computers to prove that the transaction is legitimate and to make sure that it's secure. And proof of stake is going to essentially just mean that verification model gets changed to be much less intensive on the system, which means that it uses about 1% of the energy that it currently uses. So proof of stake will use about 1% of the energy that it currently uses. And because of that, you'll have much lower transaction fees and many more transactions per second, up to 100,000 transactions, which will allow Ethereum to scale as this becomes more widely adopted. Now, the kicker is that they've been talking about this for years and it hasn't happened. So I asked Drew if he had heard about it and what he thought about it.
I've heard about it for a while, so I've sort of lost hope for it to actually happen.
Coming soon for 2 years. Well, I just heard an interview with somebody who sits, if Vitalik does these, I don't know if they're weekly meetings where they, it's like he talks through what's going on, what they're testing and everything, and it just, there was one particular guy who, I don't remember his name now, but he went on the Bankless podcast to do an interview, and the Bankless guys were like, we've been trying to get him on for years to talk about the merge, and he has declined, and now he has said he'll talk about it. So that to us seems like a positive, and he was talking about how, it seemed like they're getting closer than before. They're testing still, but I mean, Matt said the same thing from Sound.xyz. He was like, yeah, he goes, I talked to Vitalik a year and a half ago, and he's like, he goes, deadlines are not, it's like in technology, you don't deal with deadlines, you deal with functionality, and whenever the deadline is, but fingers crossed that that's coming, especially since I hold some ETH, but I should say that since this conversation happened, one of Ethereum's legacy test networks, Ropsten, successfully went through the upgrade on June 8th. And where you should never consider anything I say to be financial advice, that was a cue to me to go and maybe buy some Ethereum because now that the system is working, it's going to be more widely adoptable and it will be able to scale to a heavier amount of use. Now, the Matt that we're talking about here, we're referencing a Matt. That's Matt Mazurka, who's also known as Gigamash, a really famous indie DJ who's had a bunch of top 10 Billboard charts. I interviewed Matt Mazurka on our 6th episode of the Gig Boss podcast, and we talked all about his company, Sound.xyz, which is revolutionizing the music NFT space. If you're interested in this episode, I highly recommend you go check out that one.
You know, I always noticed too, like, it seemed like pricing was so outrageous for so long with NFTs, but anytime I saw you post about what you're selling, I would go do the math and I'd go like, oh, this is a super reasonable amount of money to purchase one of Drew's pieces. And you talked about this a little bit, but like you were obviously you're trying to be conscious about not outrageously charging for your work, even though people were spending that. It seems like people were spending that on random things too. Just
I
like
think
not even known artists.
Like how flippable your art is to someone too. Like if someone thinks that they could buy it for a lot and then immediately sell it for like 10 times that amount, they're much more willing to spend more. But like, I don't think my stuff I'm not in a place where someone could just turn around and make a ton of money off me. I had, a couple lucky streaks on Tezos recently where some stuff would sell out and people would sell it for like, I sold it for like 1 Tezos, so it was like a few bucks. And then someone turned around and sold it for like 30 Tezos. But that doesn't mean I can turn around and sell all my stuff for 30 Tezos.
Right. Are you getting a percentage? You're getting like royalty of the future sales as well?
One of the most fascinating things about all of this is like with each piece that I mint, I guess on the Ethereum side, it's mostly locked in at 10% or 15%. No, it's 10% back, like on every secondary sale. But with Tezos, you can set it, I think, all the way up to 25%.
Wow.
Granted, people can see that. People can see what secondary percentage you're taking.
Right. Yeah, I saw on a couple of your pieces, I think on Tezos blockchain, a couple were 15% royalty. And I immediately thought like, that's so rad that Drew's going to get future royalties on it. You know what I mean? It's like, that's never, I knew about that. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. Matt and I talked about this in his episode where it's like, to me, that's the big game changer with all of this and art and music is that like, you're going to get, streaming is what streaming is in terms of, we're just going to talk about music. It's like, there's a way to play that game and I'm interested in like learning how to play that game, but that whole thing is clearly broken in some way. Like there's some, this, and I think the advent of Web3, the advent of NFTs, of royalties for future sales is huge game changer. I mean, for art, it's like you sell a piece of physical art and it resells because you get famous. It resells for $3 million. You get 0 of the $3 million, right?
Unless that seller is like, a super good Samaritan is like, here, I resold this. Here, you should get a cut.
Yeah. Does that happen?
No.
I've literally never heard of that happening. It's like anyone who gets into art buying is getting in art buying to make money. I mean, like at the really high levels in anyway, when we're talking millions of dollars for a piece of art. Yeah. It's like if you're trying to buy and sell in that way, you're probably not thinking, I should give some of this money to the person who actually painted this. Which makes sense to us, doesn't it?
Right.
But
yeah. But this is like a super cool way to like ensure that happens, and it's indefinite. It's like it's not just that first secondary sale. It's like every time it gets passed around, I get some kickback.
And so as you're building your career and you're building your reputation, theoretically your art increases in value, and that's super cool. I mean, I think about that in terms of music, where you're like, Sound.xyz, they're doing this thing where it's like we're printing a limited run of. It's like they're doing like a limited run of vinyl, right? That's kind of how they're considering it. And it's like you can have a art package that comes with your music, and it's like an NFT package, and you come up with this album. Maybe you have a small fan base that values it at a certain amount. You get paid more than you would for 2 million streams on Spotify, and which is $7,000 ish, and then you become famous. Maybe you become famous. Maybe you win a Grammy. Maybe something happens where that stuff increases, and then you get paid again. Which is if it flips. I mean, that's everything. That's going to completely change the way that musicians think about how to sell their music, and there's been so much pushback against it. I just feel like it's been so short-sighted. It's like I understand that there's complexities, and we could talk about that a little bit, but man, the potential in my mind, far outweighs.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. There's so much potential with it. And I've seen it help so many artists, and I'm sure it's helped so many musicians too. That's one side that I would like to get more into, is the musician side of things. Last time I looked, I thought that Sound XYZ was, you had to apply and be accepted.
It's an exclusive club. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're only running, I don't remember what the number was. When I talked to Matt, it was maybe like 25, 30 artists, it's like they're increasing all the time, but they're trying to scale slowly, and they're trying to make sure that they keep the trash out. This is one of the things we can talk about is like OpenSea.io, I think, came out and said like 70% or 80% of the NFTs are fraudulent on our site. It's like that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
That's a problem. And your art is not, it's like you're a real artist making real art, selling your art on OpenSea. I feel like that's something that the industry has to grapple with. And maybe Matt, what Matt said was that people who are actually doing the real, genuine work in the space are just not good at self-promotion. They're not thinking about self-promotion. They're working on the shit, right? And it's like they're not really self-promoters. And so all you hear about is these scammers or whatever, opportunists in a new space,
Right, yeah. And it's like getting filled more and more with, I get so many scam messages, they're everywhere,
What are the messages because your art is up, you get messages?
Yeah, messages like any NFT artist, you're in there long enough, you get messages of trying to get you to click a link that then exposes all of your passwords and seed phrases, and then everything you own and all your crypto is gone unless you've got it, on a ledger or something.
Jeez Louise.
But just like with anything, scammers will fill a void somewhere.
Yep.
It used to just be, I still get voicemails, people call your phone, scammers call your phone, scammers send you emails. Now scammers are in the NFT space.
Yeah. I get a lot of scam texts.
Yeah.
We should get rid of texting altogether because some people are scamming. That's the argument, right? Let's get rid of it. Let's get rid of it altogether.
Well, that seems to be what a lot of people would say for NFTs. It's like, it's just all fraudulent pyramid scheme, and let's just get rid of it all.
Yeah.
But I think most people don't understand. They don't understand it, what it is, and the potential it holds.
When we come back, Drew tells us how selling his art as NFTs became a crucial part of his family's income during the global pandemic.
We're just going to pause there for a sec to say that this podcast is brought to you by the Gig Boss app. Gianna and I created Gig Boss because we were leading our own groups, freelancing in others, touring, teaching private lessons, and doing freelance education work, all while raising our 2 boys. We needed a way to keep track of everything. Create a group, create an event, and start organizing the madness. Gig Boss app is free on iOS and Android. How significant has selling your NFTs been in terms of your income pie as an artist and as a musician?
Well, it happened at a very crucial time because we were into the pandemic already, but it was getting kind of tight. My wife and I are musicians.
Yep.
The pandemic made us realize how much money we made from gigs and how much it supplemented our income.
Yeah.
And so the NFTs, they really helped fill that hole and got us through. And then taxes was pretty good too.
Yeah.
But it was a sign that that was a really successful year. I hear plenty of people complaining about taxes, but I saw it as wow,
this is a sign that I did well.
I made that much, and that was crucial.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So now how does it balance? We talked a little bit about that before we started recording, that you're maybe scaling down how many gigs you're playing, that you were just saying yes to everything. I was also talking to Katie Ernst on this podcast, amazing upright player. She's an upright player and singer. She's a band called Twin Talk, trio, and she has a bunch of solo stuff too. And she was saying sort of the same thing, that at some point, she goes, now everything I do is something that I love and I'm invested in, and that is artistically satisfying for me. But early on, the idea was I got to say yes to everything. So you're somewhere along that path, yeah?
Yeah. And being sort of forced to stay home, working from home, and then having no gigs, I did enjoy the time away from it a bit. It was a nice reset, and it kind of cleansed the palate, and I could reapproach it what I wanted to do that was artistically satisfying. And I guess also, financially smart.
Right. I'm certainly, I started, in my time in Minneapolis, I was full-time playing for a long time, and then I was kind of supplementing with teaching, and had a couple adjunct faculty gigs that became sort of significant, but it still wasn't. The majority of my time was still playing and recording and touring. And now that I am at Michigan Tech, as the director of jazz studies here, it's been the pandemic in general was, I'm going to have to put explicit on this episode, it was a huge mind fuck. Just in general, for me, like, it was a huge identity crisis. It was like, I knew that I was coming to a rural area, but when we first moved here, we were driving back to play all the time. I was going down to Chicago and going to Minneapolis. We threw this big show at the Dakota Thanksgiving week before, 2019. It was sold out. We were like, man, we could still do this from the UP. We could still put on big shows. I can still go on little tours. And then pandemic hit, and it was like, wait, am I not a performer anymore? Like, what's happening? What's happening? Major identity crisis. And now that things are opening back up again, it's nice to feel a little bit more balanced, but I also feel like I don't want to say yes to everything as well. And that I know that that's how I was feeling towards the end of my time in Minneapolis. I was feeling like, I don't want to play this funeral gig, like I started playing all these funeral gigs after my dad died. It was the worst, man. It was like, man, why am I doing this? I was feeling sad all the time. It's like, it's happy me. I was playing New Orleans music at funerals, and there was 2 different bands I did this with, and I told both the bands, I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. So don't call me for these gigs anymore. But I remember being in that place, but it was hard to remember that feeling during the pandemic. And then when things started to open up again, I started getting some major FOMO. I was like, oh my God, I need to be in a scene. I need to be playing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's like we're starting to find some balance now, which is nice. But I feel like a lot of people that get to be 10, 15 years into a music career, and maybe it's because like you become more well-known, you're getting better gigs. You don't have to take the like $40 Tuesday gig or $75 Wednesday gig or whatever. It's like you can go, all right, I can say no to those. Be with my family. I can spend that night rehearsing with one of my bands or recording or doing something that's more meaningful to me. Does that feel like where you're at? I mean, like,
yeah, I began to think like I could spend that time getting ready to go, loading the car, driving, spending the gas, being away from home for like 8 hours and making like $75 to $100, or I could spend time with family, work on art, and possibly sell that for more than $100.
Yeah, way more.
And it kind of shifted my perspectives. And the pandemic made me realize how much I missed making art, because I stopped doing those every days in 2019. Because I had a full-time job raising a family, and I wasn't putting the time into the everydays that I wanted to. It was becoming a chore, and it wasn't as fun anymore. Because I did it because I wanted to learn more and get better. And while I didn't feel like I was getting better. I was just kind of like doing the same stuff, doing the same things just to check off the everyday for the day.
Yeah, interesting. So the reset, did you go back to doing everydays again or no?
No, now I'm not everydays. I do have a weekly thing going on right now where I post a weekly loop that I sell on Tezos.
Cool.
But the getting away from everydays kind of allowed me to focus on longer term projects, which was really refreshing.
Yeah. Great.
To be able to spend more headspace on a project without having to leave it to then do an everyday, crank that out.
Right. Right.
It wasn't working anymore. And it didn't mean that I wasn't going to make art anymore. I think that's what I was afraid of for a while. I was like, if I don't make art every day, I'm not going to have the discipline to do it anymore.
Yeah, interesting.
But I think for doing it for so long, I actually did have the discipline to do it.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Yeah, and it's really helped with putting together these NFT projects, these audiovisual loops, and getting the music together for them. I've done some collaborations with Brian. Brian is like, some of them he's put together the whole tune. Some of them I've thrown down bass on them and then throw it up on he and I have stuff on Foundation.
What's Foundation?
It's similar to Known Origin. It's just another Ethereum NFT site. For a while, I think it was only auction based. So you'd set your reserve, and then someone could place a bid. And if it was at the reserve, then a 24-hour countdown would start. And then you just hype the hell out of it, trying to get other people to bid on it.
Right.
But now they've since switched from only auction to adding buy it now feature and
eBay style.
Yeah.
Cool. And when we say Brian, we're talking about Brian Lewis Smith, great trumpet player. really, I've always loved his trumpet playing and his use of electronics in trumpet playing. One of the reasons why I loved Copland. No, the whole band was great, but it was really fun to watch Brian up there playing.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite musicians to play with, and we don't get to play much anymore, and so these collaborations have been fun to kind of connect virtually, even though we live just like right across town.
I was going to ask, like, don't you guys live in the same town? I thought, did he move away? Is what I was going to ask. You're just working remote anyway.
Yeah, we got together recently, and he's gotten so many synths over the pandemic, and I'm very jealous.
Yeah, cool.
But he's always coming up with some amazing, beautiful sounds that are always like really inspiring. They always make me want to just like run home right away and start writing stuff.
Yeah. So if somebody wanted to find you on Foundation and your work with Brian, how would they search for that?
So I've luckily had the foresight to stick with a single alias for all of my work in the NFT space, and that's DrewMadeStuff.
DrewMadeStuff, right? And you got your little picture of your, like, is that a kid picture of you? Is that you as a kid? Nice. Nice. Cool. And if let's say a young person is a digital artist, a young person is a digital artist and a musician, and they want to get into minting NFTs, where would you, like, what kind of advice would you give a person like that? Where do they start?
I think make sure you're still just creating art. Make art. Make sure that you are feeling good about it, because once you enter the NFT space, it's tempting to like sway the way you make art to try to follow
trends
and what other people are doing and what other people are saying.
Yep.
What like high profile collectors are telling you about what you might want to consider putting into your artwork. Because no one's going to consistently buy your artwork. Like, there's not one person that's going to buy every single piece of your artwork. So you're going to have your high points and your low points where you're just making sales and making no sales. And you have to make sure that you know what art you like to make when you're making a lot of sales and when you're not making a lot of sales. And you got to feel good in both.
Cool.
I mean, it's okay to feel bad too, but don't suppress your feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes it hurts. But we push through. That's what it's all about. Yeah, and then I wanted to ask too, did you ever release, so Beeple, the big thing the reason I found out about Beeple was because he sold his everydays, 5,000 maybe?
Yeah, the first 5,000 of them.
Yeah, and he sold them for something ridiculous, $62 million or something like that.
$62 or $63 million.
Yeah.
It was like that was a record.
So have you considered packaging all of your everydays from 2012 to 2019?
Yeah, I thought about it for under a second.
And then you decided, no, I'm not going to do it?
I just don't think that, I don't know if I would be interested in seeing that, and I don't know if anyone else would be interested in seeing that.
Yeah.
Also because it sounds extremely daunting to put something like that together.
Interesting. Well, man, thank you for coming on here and talking to me about all this stuff.
Yeah, this is super fun. Thanks for having me on here. Happy to chat about it. I didn't know that you were into crypto so much. That's great.
Yeah, I'm just super curious and interested, and I'm constantly listening. And because we're really trying to run like a tech company, it's like I really feel like I should know anyway. Just like be at least aware of what's going on and see where we're going in the future. I'm also I'm interested in solving problems, and like to me, streaming is a problem. It's a big problem, and it feels like crypto could be, and when it's like when you say crypto, that encompasses NFTs. I know you know this, but that's like people listening. It's like it's all of it, and I just think it has, as we've said, such fascinating implications for what's coming. And
right,
to me, that's interesting. That's worth at least paying attention.
Definitely.
I probably started buying crypto a little too late. I had a buddy who told me about Bitcoin in like 2012, and he was like, man, you should just spend $200 on, and I was like, so broke. I was so broke playing, just being a full-time musician. I was like, there's no way I could come up with $200 to do this. It's like, God damn it. Why didn't I do that? Whatever, man. It is what it is.
I completely agree though, because like that type of money back then was like, I couldn't spare it. I couldn't spare it at the time.
Yeah, it's tough. That friend of mine is now living in a high rise in Denver. So he's doing all right. Well, thanks, man. I'm going to link all your stuff. So if people want to find you on all your digital artwork, your NFTs, I'll link all that stuff. I'll also link your bands, Copland. No, is Copland doing stuff still or no?
No. I mean, we still exist. We haven't done anything in a very long time.
Yeah, it's great music. I'll link it anyway. I'll link Coplan. I'll link Jack Lyon. And thanks, man. This was super awesome and informative. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. Great to talk.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If you're digging the show, please give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Write us a little review if you have the time. That really helps us out. And please go download GigBoss app. GigBoss app is totally free on iOS and Android. If you are a gigging musician, it is an organizational tool for you. It is free. You can create groups. You can create events. You can tag your events to your groups. You can track how much money you've made, whether or not you've been paid. You can accept or decline invites in the app or in email. It's super slick. It's totally free. Click the link in the show notes to download.